this is H2O with build guide for Season 2 for the Explosive Flask Trapper build. I've played this in Season 1 in the 1.1 patch with the Harbingers, and now kind of giving you an update on Season 2 and where it kind of falls. So big update with the build. It did receive some significant nerfs and some significant buffs as well, so combination. Really here, the big things that were nerfed are the mana cost, Unsettled Sabotage, Jelker's Blueprint, also reduced from 3 to 4 points, which is just an attack speed decrease as well as mana decrease, and then the Trap Sprinkler adding 1 mana per point. So kind of got it with the trifecta there for nerfs in terms of mana. And really, this specific version just kind of got caught in the crossfire for all of the other, Jelkor's Blast Knife with all the detonating arrow shenanigans that's been happening over the past couple seasons, and it basically got nerfed because Explosive Trap had to get nerfed because of that. So effectively, with 2 T7 mana rings and the 5 traps, the mana cost currently is 12.7 and will be going up to 20 mana for Season 2. So this would basically be, if in Season 2, if we were throwing only 4 out of our 5 traps, that's basically effectively what we are. So, it's 20% of our total overall damage that is lost, but it's not, not actually lost because we can gain that back. It's just going to take a little more mana investment. However, Acid Flask itself receives some pretty significant buffs to counteract that, and the base damage effectiveness went from 100 to 125. Corrosive, which is a more multiplier, basically doubled total from 40% to 80%, and then the alchemical proficiency also got its more multiplier buffed up. So that's a pretty significant damage buff just from Acid Flask itself, and again, these are multiplied by 5 when we're using Explosive Trap to launch that, so it's a lot more damage. Just note that the cost concoction was buffed as well, which is actually a pretty significant buff to the leveling portion of this build, just because ailments are very strong early on, and this helps keep that in line. So without further ado, we'll kind of go into the updates for this build for Season 2, and we'll start there. Alright, in Season 2, we're going to actually look to solve some of the mana issues brought about by the nerfs to Explosive Trap by playing Low Life Blade Dancer. So you can see we're using Exsanguinous, Last Steps of Living, and then the Missing Health Gained as Ward experimental affix. So that's the trifecta for this build. So just turning our health into ward, and then utilizing some of the more ward retention like Strand of Souls, and yes, even Vessel of Strife. This still is probably the best, even though we don't have any health regen, just because of the ward retention itself, as well as it provides mana, and we can get the affixes through the new LP crafting system pretty easily on most of this build. So it looks really heavy, unique from the get-go, but really nothing here is extremely rare. The rarest thing is really just your choice of amulet to however you want. If you want an Omnis, Nihilus, Orion's Eye, I mean, even realistically, any exalted amulet will do the job, but this is Endgame, so just looking to kind of get what you're at. So really the build still has the base structure of how it kind of functions. You use Explosive Trap with the Instrument of Alchemist with Trap Sprinkler and Trebuchet to launch the Acid Flasks. You get all your extra traps through these nodes over here, as well as using clustered explosives to get the traps up to 5. So the nodes here, Subtle Sabotage, this was the one that received the nerf with the mana cost, as well as Jelker's Blueprint. It indirectly received the nerf because it went from 4 to 3 points, so the mana efficiency also decreased. This Trap Sprinkler is where they also added +1 mana cost per per point here, so really you got hit by the, like I said, the trifecta, and it really is costing 20 mana for all 5 traps. And then Acid Flask got the buffs here in Corrosive with an 80% more multiplier, and then Alchemical Proficiency with that mana efficiency. No, that was buffed last patch, but the damage increase as well up to 40%. So everything else is pretty standard here. You still take all the crit chance, crit multi, flat throwing. You take the knowledge immunity for the fire pen when it's converted. And realistically, it's just the very standard Acid Flask that we've been running for the past couple seasons. Highest damage output you can get for this skill is basically the setup. Shift. So we're playing low life on Blade Dancer for a couple reasons. The big reason is for the Swift Recovery node here. We get 48 mana per shift, and you can shift every like 1.7 to 2 seconds. This is going to help pretty much keep all of your mana costs. It's not going to completely solve it by itself, but it's going to help reduce the overall burden on your mana regen. Everything else here is really just set up for an endgame build. I see one point here should actually be in Lasting Presence, because you want that clone for your traps. But nothing out of the ordinary here for shift. We do want this cleanse, so even though this will heal us a small amount, having a cleanse is extremely important in the game, and it's pretty easy to have this on less than 2 second cooldown in the end game. Smoke Bomb, again, very much the same thing, has cleanse, it has the extra throwing damage, buff duration, that has the shadows for the explosive traps to be thrown, and then we want dust shrouds for our defenses. Very standard Smoke Bomb package. And then Umbral Blades is the end game version after you're done leveling and you just need a little bit more mana. There really isn't a 5th skill that is super good. Some people in the past have used Decoy. I've seen pretty much every other last skill. I think Synchronized Strike has been used before, just for extra clone. I've seen net used for the damage increase and for the attack speed. It really is up to you. I use Umbral Blades purely for this Nightmare Dash ability. We're scaling a ton of throwing attack speed, and we can throw out tons of these Umbral Blades daggers, which also increases gives us Dust Shroud. The shadows from all of our abilities drop Umbral Blades, so these are lingering in the ground, and then every time you use Shift, you just gain 2 mana. This can pretty drastically fill up your mana bar, along with the 48 mana you get from Shift. Again, you can weave in these between attacks, between immunity phases for bosses, while you're just running around in a monolith if you feel like you have any mana issues. But realistically, this is probably only used when you get upwards of like 500, 600, 700 corruption, where you might need a little bit more extra mana to kind of go through the heavier elite enemies and packs. But other than that, it's pretty much not used. The big key takeaway now with the end game is really just your idol systems, as long with the blessings. So this package is pretty much the same. You can throw an Inhibition. You can use these 2x2s for the crit multi, throwing damage. The added ward decay, the added increased crit strike and crit multi. I think this one also, they have increased throwing damage and increased damage while dual wielding. So there's a lot of good chase, basically affixes you can get for these 2x2 idols. Even the 1x3 idols have some good chase ones. But realistically, the most of this will be filled up with either your resistances, your flat dodge, increased dodge. These small idols also have ward retention and health. Again, I said dodge, resistances, and then the big one is mana. You can get flat mana and increased mana regen, as well as even like fire resistance for that pen on Acid Flask. But it really is going to come down to really where your build is, where your resistances are, how much mana regen you need, how much ward retention and ward per second you need, how much dodge you need, and you just kind of have to use that in combination with some of these blessings. So, I mean, the ward decay threshold is on a blessing, all your resistances, your increased dodge rating, your flat dodge rating was buffed as well, and then your all resistances. So this is the slot that really, in the end game, it's going to come down to kind of personal choice. If you want more ward, do you want more mana regen, how much dodge you want. It's kind of just a dealer's choice, and it all kind of depends on how high you want to push corruption, and if you need your defenses or you want more offense power. It's really going to come down to each individual person. So yeah, I'll go over some of the other things in here. Trader's Tongue, really great. Basically the best dagger you can get. Has everything you want. Crit multi. We go for more crit multi, increased mana regen. It's going to give you that flat 13% crit strike chance in your offhand, plus 2 to levels of dex skills. It pretty much is what carries this build into making it so easy to crit cap, along with the increased crit chance in the acid flash tree itself. While leveling, you can use, I'm blanking on the name. It is Peak of the Mountain. You can use Peak of the Mountain while leveling because it's very easy to get the increased crit chance. However, in the end game, you get this T7 increased crit chance on your helmet, which allows you to kind of really flex around the rest of some of the suffix pressure that you have by having so many uniques, as well as, again, having more fire resistance, which is more fire pen for acid flask, and then crit multi on the implicitness of the dragon visage here helmet. Smoke Weaver, great defensive dagger. It gives you a little more crit, flat crit, which will bring you over the threshold to basically allow you to use. This is your only increased crit strike chance on like the entire build. It's enough to basically crit cap you. The extra 2% there, but it's also the flat dodge rating and the reduced shift distances, whatever. The increased cooldown recovery speed. Remember, shift not only is our survivability tool, but is also our mana generator. So the quicker the cooldown on that, the more mana we generate. Baraka's is the best overall, just throwing gloves you can get with the highest throwing crit strike multi. And then we really want to make sure we have on that missing health gain just ward per second, so you have to use that in the experimental crafting. And then throwing speed or throwing damage are both viable options. Increased health, there's just a ton of great affixes for gloves, and you just have to choose which ones you want to put on there after the ward gain per second. Like I said, last episode living. Movement speed's king, so I would always go for that. After having frenzy after you use a traversal skill, which includes the dodge roll or the evade mechanic, and then increased effective frenzy. So this is just a ton of attack speed that you're just basically given for free because of how traversal works in this game, and with the low cooldown of shift, you basically have this a permanent frenzy up all the time. There's nothing else really to say about the rest of the build. The big key takeaway here is Julra's. So again, we're dealing with lots of mana pressure. The best affix in the entire game for this build is the throwing damage, flat throwing damage, and then the minor mana cost for throwing skills. The reason we want to use this on Julra's is the last line there when you use movement or time travel skill. Everything is triple for 4 seconds, and movement also qualifies for evade, so even if you evade, it's going to go off. So this is always going to go off every 12 seconds, there's no doubt about it. And it's going to reduce the cost from 20 down to like 12 point something, like 7 or something like that. It's really going to be basically back to the pre-nerfed version of this build in 1.1. That's how much it only gives because of the way that the calculation starts with reducing mana cost. It starts with flat, then like what mana mana efficiency and then reduce mana cost. So it isn't like a turn this into a 0 cost skill, but it's basically free for the 4 seconds while you use it, because we have so much mana regeneration as well. The other thing to note about this is it's not just the explicits, like the affixes that get tripled, it's also the implicits. So any mana you have on these is going to also triple, which basically overcaps our mana from the use. So it's going to use our overcapped mana first before it's actually going to start draining our normal mana pool, if you want to think of it that way. So this really is like 4 seconds of free, extremely fast throwing attack skills, extremely strong throwing attack, because not only is the mana cost given tripled, but also the flat damage. We're gaining tons and tons of more damage. The mana spent gained as ward on like the belt and jewels is it's there. It's not like irrelevant. It does impact some increases, especially when you're going around killing things. But these jewels it's a guaranteed 1 LP drop from anytime you defeat Jorah. So it's pretty much a guarantee. You always will just get the be able to slam the throwing damage and mana cost. It's basically one of the first major upgrades you can do for this build. With that, we'll kind of go into the passives real quick. It's very much the standard 20-ish points. I do put the 4 points into Sapping Strike at the end, and this is just for those Umbral Blades that will cost 0, so we're going to gain some mana cost from just using Umbral Blades, as well as when you recall them. Again, it's up to you if you want to keep that, but the rest of the points here are pretty much mandatory. Blade Dancer, the part, again, why we're doing low life is this Death's Door, along with the whole mana from Swift Recovery from the Shift ability. But this just is a flat, my minus 24% damage taken while at low health, so that's all the time. So all of our ward basically has this minus 24% less damage taken, and we always have crit multi of 80%. So this is a huge defensive and offensive power for the build, and basically what allows it to survive any hit that it doesn't dodge. Also has all in, again, great crit strike multi. We get 1 more max shadow, the mana regen at the top of the tree, crit vulnerability, which isn't really usable for us, but again, it's great while you're leveling in the early game. Just you have so many hits that anyone is going to be, if you're like 98% at your crit chance, this is just going to be guaranteed that you're almost always at 100%, so you don't lose the damage from the non-critical hits here. Everything else in here is all based on survivability. You need these points to get to the end of the tree. You want the health, you want the dexterity, glancing blow chance. You have to take these points throwing physical damage, so the physical damage isn't going to scale with any fire related, but it still is going to give you some flat physical damage that you can scale from all your increased throwing damage, and then damage calculations to end with some more multipliers. So it's there. It's not like a large amount, but it's helpful. And then just again, 8 points, throwing attack damage, movement speed. Falconer's kind of got the same thing. We want as much health, flat dodge, more damage, increased throwing attack speed, increased throwing damage, and then just mana regen. So you kind of see the theme here is our damage is basically from all the throwing skills, and then we want our mana regeneration as high as possible, and then life. There is a package here in Marksman. You can take concentration for the more damage, as well as the flat dodge, and then increased dodge and less hit damage taken. This is very strong, and I recommend it for when you get higher up into the end game. It just depends on if you feel it's necessary or not. I created an entire loot filter that's basically designed from the start, from leveling from Act 1 all the way through campaign, early monoliths, empowered monoliths, and then the end game push and grind and getting all the rest of the items you need. So the loot filter basically will act as your aid as you're going through this process. I also wrote up leveling for each act, what to take for each node. So if the planner is meant for the end game, but as you're leveling it, you're going to take a little bit different path to get there with whether the passives you take, as well as the skills like puncture. The big thing to note is we are going to select marksman to level. This just allows you to get the mana warp ability at the end of the marksman tree, which is a large amount of mana gained on hit when you use the zero cost skill, which is what puncture is. So yeah, this whole entire leveling section is in the build guide if you want to use this all the way through monoliths, and then into empowered monoliths. Some things to kind of note while leveling: you're going to level as poison, acid flask, so we'll just be using acid flask in the beginning. So we're really just looking for some of those damage over time abilities. We love silver rings for movement speed. Again, all the affixes you want are going to be in the loot filter, and they're going to show up for you as you level. And it really just kind of shows you what a typical, pretty early game while you're in the campaign, what a character will look like, and then as well as into early monoliths, what a character might look like using Peak of the Mountain, as well to crit cap. Some things to note is since you'll be leveling as a marksman, you'll want Dragon Song, so you want to use Rune Ascendance on those Dragon Songs pretty much as soon as you get them. I think it's like a level 35 bow, so this just shows you what kind of typical affixes you might have at this time and what you'll be looking for. It's not perfect. Do not follow this to a T. You don't need to have all these exact affixes, but again, the items will drop for you. They'll be highlighted in orange, and you kind of just plug and play and keep upgrading your affixes as you go. So we're going to go in game here and show you some of the ways we utilize the mana rotation and kind of how it works here in how it will work in Season 2. So I'm just going to put on these rings here. So again, we're missing this mana cost because I want to show you how much more mana we can basically burn through. So we're going to burn through the mana cost here. Don't have the throwing attack speed, see because we're down pretty low. Then using shift is going to give us a good amount of mana back pretty quickly as we go. And the star dial will be even more, like I said, if you have those T7 mana rings on. But we can get back to mana cost pretty quickly here. The mana regen is only 13, so again, pretty low for what the build will cost. But we can use this, weave in, and lower. I want to show you how we can just throw out all these umbral daggers, dash, and look how much mana we gain back relatively quickly here. So again, this isn't costing 0, otherwise we'd be getting mana back because I have took the rings off. But we can basically lose all of our mana very quickly. Dash, gain a bunch back. Dash, gain a bunch back. And that's really only like the total end game part. When you actually have the rings on, enough mana regen in the build, in Season 2 it's not going to be as large of an issue as you would look at here. You can see that's why we're playing low life. Again, this is all just really pretty junky gear that I was just collected together to kind of show you what Season 2 would look like. So with leveling, we are going to be using a bow, like I said. And we want Dragon Song because it gives you that +2 to fire skills, which is similar to Trader's Tongue. It gives you flat crit for your fire skills, very similar to Trader's Tongue. It's a very easy transition from Dragon Song into daggers at the end game. And the reason why we want to level as a marksman, like I said, is this ability right here, Mana Warp. This is a flat 15 mana gain on any skill that costs 0. Puncture costs 0. We also will have Sapping Strikes. So again, this is 8, so we get 8 mana. We get 15 from Mana Warp, so we're at, 23. And then inside the Puncture tree itself, There's also this ability, Mind Piercer, which can be 4. So uh, we're at 27 mana on hit, and Puncture has this nice Rapid Strikes ability, which allows you to hit 3 times very quickly every 4 seconds. So bow attack speed isn't even something that we need to invest in which we will anyways while we're going around mapping. But we'll be able to just throw out traps and use Puncture and gain back all of our mana within really one to 2 bursts of using Puncture. You can see I'm not even attacking fast, but when those Rapid Strikes and Frenzy go off, I mean, look at the difference in speed. Again, I have nothing. I can't be a marksman right now, but we'll be able to do that later in Season 2. So really it will look like you'll be using like 3 attacks, 3 to 4 like salvos of your traps, and then you use Puncture, gain all your mana back in between the attacks. So the way it works here is you would throw your traps before they detonate, right, onto the boss, which will consume your explosive trap cost and your acid flask cost, because when you're leveling, acid flask is going to cost mana. Before those acid flasks basically proc, you can weave in punctures to guarantee that you have enough mana for the acid flask to proc off the explosive trap. So you'll throw it, and then puncture, and then all the acid flasks will still come out. And this basically eliminates any need for mana regen at all while you're leveling, and you can level extremely fast and have almost endgame damage basically from like Act 5 in the campaign. So that's all in that leveling section in the guide as well. Like I said, we start off early leveling with Acid Flask Poison, and then really end up using this whole Explosive Flask combo. Basically at the end of the campaign, early monoliths, and then we want to switch to the daggers sometime in early empowered monoliths. Once you get your Jewel Rose online, once you start getting some of the more key pieces like Trader's Tongue, which you'll need Peak of the Mountain. It's basically Peak of the Mountain, Trader's Tongue, and the T7s on some Jewel Rose. Once you have these, you can basically switch over. You won't be low life, but you'll still be able to use, Puncture with a dagger, and still gain some mana back. It's not the same as Mana Warp, but it's a very pretty seamless transition, and you're still doing tons and tons of damage. And that's it. This video is a lot longer probably. Just there's a lot of changes for Season 2 that actually impacted this build kind of more than I originally thought it would. Feel free to reach out with any questions you guys got, or look at the build guide if any questions that can be answered pretty easily. Make sure to use the loot filter if you're kind of new to the game or want to use it while leveling. It really does help just kind of turn your brain off, and all the drops will kind of be highlighted for you. I've tested it multiple times in solo self found and character found, and it works pretty much without a hitch. If you do find anything that just looks weird, you can always let me know and I can update the filter. But it should work pretty seamlessly for Season 2 for you. Yeah, thanks.